So, we are here for the first episode in a new mini-series spreading across 2023, and that is obviously themed Star Wars. That's why I'm involved in it, of course, and I am joined by two incredible individuals who have had somewhat different Star Wars stories, as everyone has, and has consumed different amounts of media content surrounding it. It's always delightful hearing different people's perspectives. So I've got the podfather himself of Comics in Motion, Dave Horrocks. Dave, how are you doing, sir? And with Rebels, what comes to your mind when you think of Star Wars Rebels? Just straight up, first thing you think.
So I think, first of all, hey Mike, and our next guest we'll speak to in a minute. Where did I come into Rebels? I think I might have heard you refer to it lots and lots. In fact, I'd seen Clone Wars, and before the whole Disney acquisition and whatever, and it obviously had this huge fan base. And then I think it was a couple of years ago or something, and I thought, right, I'm going to see what this Clone Wars thing's all about. Let's start. Oh, look, it looks like it's a movie. Let's go ahead and watch that. And it's horrendous. I mean, anyone over the age of 6 doesn't really need to watch it. I just thought it was so terrible. I'm like, what the F? What are people going on about? But I think listening to, your Star Wars Comics in Canon show, and you quite often will refer back to that. And I thought, you know what, let me give it a go. And I started it, and I think I was bought in. So I already, going into it, I knew where it was set in the timeline because you talk about it. And that kind of interests me, that period in between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope. That's the perfect sort of time for me. And so going into it, I'm like, oh, right, okay, it's a bit of animation. Can I get this? Something weird happens when you get old and grumpy. Like when you're a kid, you sit there and you gorge on cartoons, every Saturday morning. And I've done it with a few other things. I tried to go back and watch the original series one or season 1 of Transformers. Oh, it's really hard. It's a really, really hard watch because the animation is so bad. They've cut all sorts of corners and everything. And I guess, I had more of an opinion that in my memory, it was better. Mm-hmm. And so it took me a little bit to get into Rebels. But I would say it was only a few episodes. And then something weird happens where you almost don't notice the animation as much anymore. I'd say maybe it takes you 3 or so episodes and then you're kind of through it. I'm sure we'll get into, how the season flows and everything, but I feel like some of the episodes almost jump back into that post-school kind of cartoon type feel.
After school special.
Yeah, but then you have the sort of darker, more serious stuff, a bit like Clone Wars did as well.
Mm-hmm.
But and so I was bought in. I think the fact that the story is so good. I think the fact that all the music is the John Williams score. All of the sound effects are pure Star Wars. So there's enough there to totally take you past the animation. And once I was hooked in this season 1, that was it. I just had to binge the other 3 seasons, which fortunately were all available before I bothered to watch the first one. So it was good. But I mean, I think the downside, so this is my second watch through, the downside of gorging it is you don't really stop and savor what you've just seen.
Mm-hmm.
Just straight into the next episode. And so even now, like, it's hard. I look and it's like, wow, there's so many episodes. I don't really remember there being so many. That's because I probably watched 3 or 4 or maybe even 5 in a go, in a single sitting. So, yeah, I am a big fan of this show, though. And I think we're going to get more, aren't we, in the live action universe from here. So, yeah, and I was very keen because we were recording something, the 3 of us, weren't we? And
Andor, I think, the finale.
Yeah, that was it. So it just came up. So I'm quite keen, to get your perspective and our next guest's perspective.
To drag Maff into it. So before we explain kind of what the series is going to be about, I wanted to get sort of right into it. So this is with Maff, who has the least experience with this content out of all of us. So before I explain the whole show and the premise, Maff, Star Wars Rebels, what kind of the first time you heard about it, your kind of first thoughts, and how it's kind of been as an overview of the first series?
Well,
Be as honest as you want. You won't hurt my feelings.
Right,
Don't
okay.
worry.
I got bullied into watching this pretty much by Mike. It's the best Star Wars ever. I'd heard of it, but it was animation, and it's funny actually. And reflecting now, I always thought I'm a Star Wars fan, and I realised that I'm not as big a fan as what I thought I was. I watched films, obviously. I'm old enough to the first one came out just before I was born, but I'm old enough to kind of I grew up with the originals. The prequels they was all right when they came out, but as you go back and rewatch them, they're a bit hit and miss. And then the sequels were a bit again hit and miss. I think it a bit disjointed. Mm-hmm. But I think going back to what Dave said about like the Transformers. Back then, that's all we had. We wasn't used to all these other blockbusters that we get now. So I suppose we was thankful for getting, dodgy animation, dodgy, special effects and that. I was aware of Rebels, I was aware of Clone Wars, but I saw it as it's animation. I just don't always have time to kind of sit down. I think I may have seen Clone Wars a little bit as my kids were growing up, but it wasn't ever something I really sat down and watched. Mm-hmm. Then obviously you've mentioned once or twice, I think, that this is quite good.
Once or twice in every conversation we've ever had is what you mean.
Have you watched Rebels yet? No, I haven't. So, and then obviously we were discussing on Andor, and you were saying, look, you need to sit down and watch this. So I took the bullet, and I started off watching with my 4-year-old. He only got about 3 episodes into it. He's not quite ready to kind of appreciate and kind of stick with it. He loved the Wookiees, or the Huggies as he called them. He really enjoyed them, but there's a lot more story to this than what I expected. Mm-hmm. I thought it was going to be a bit more kids, aimed at the kids, and the story itself, I don't think it is. And this is only season 1. I haven't gone past season 1. I did watch it back in December, so my memory's a little bit shaky now. But I did want to go on and watch more of it, but I thought let's just do this in chunks and just try kind of see where they go from here. But yeah, I feel that I may have to have my Star Wars card back in, because it's like Mandalorian. I haven't finished all of season 1 yet. I really need to go back and kind of watch that in season 2, because with season 3 coming out in a month's time.
Yep, and if you want to be on any of the discussion shows for that, you have to have actually seen it. You can't just blag your way in it, because I'll smell you out. I'll get you.
Yeah.
Can I just say, finale of season 2, have you been spoiled with that?
I am slightly aware I'm aware of a character being in there, but it's a funny one with spoilers. They don't really bother me too much, because you can still, once you get into that moment, even if you might be aware that something's going to happen within reason, you can still be brought up in the moment, and you can still kind of enjoy it. So I am aware of a character at the end of season 2, but I still think once I actually get to that bit, I'll be fine. It's funny, Andor's the catalyst that's brought me back into Star Wars, to be fair. I didn't expect Andor to be as good as what it was. We've got a few TV programs that are out at the moment, and they just seem to really be kind of hitting it for TV series that I'm enjoying. So, but yeah, I'm glad that you did bully me into watching this. So it's, as we go on, it is a bit disjointed at times, I think,
But again, this is season 1. I'm sure that they're all kind of trying to find the right way of where they're meant to go. A bit like Ezra is doing to a certain degree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, season 1 of Rebels is the worst season by a lot.
Right.
Like the second season is like 1 or 2 points above it. Series 3 is the same, but then Series 4, it's got some stuff. It's got some stuff, but we're nowhere near that yet. I'm not going to go near that. We're several episodes away from that. But just Series 1. So Series 1 of Rebels, and I know I go on about the show a lot, and I was so happy to be able to watch it again. And I will clarify, I love season 1 of Rebels. I think it's brilliant. It's got some real fantastic standouts, but yeah, its issue is there's a couple of fillery episodes and they don't really feel like they go anywhere, and they just feel like it's kind of plodding along, and you're like, where? And then it kind of ends, you're like, they're kind of where they were at the start, and they don't really seem to have learnt much. But on this now being my third watch, because I actually watched this before Clone Wars as well. One of the reasons I bully people into doing it as well is because you haven't seen Clone Wars, have you, Maff? You said you've just you caught parts of it.
Not really. No.
So there's a part of this that now that you've, well, actually no, there's parts of this that you won't have connected to other parts for you thinking about it. So we'll have to make sure that we don't say anything about anything that's not happened in Andor, because you haven't even got through anything. But with Rebels, just specifically, when you started that first episode, did you watch the two together, Maff, the Spark of the Rebellion?
Yeah.
So what did you think after watching that sort of, it's released as a special, as a one-off kind of thing? What did you think? After you finished that, after you hearing me talking about it, and then obviously Dave got on board after our Andor discussion, all that sort of stuff. I know you were watching it with your son, but what kind of, when it finished, what did you kind of think? What did you kind of feel just in that first impression?
I didn't feel that I was really watching a children's cartoon.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't mind the animation. That wasn't an issue at all. The story, having come off the back of watching Andor and Obi-Wan, it felt, to be fair, the story there hooks me in straight away. You do have the Ezra, Luke Skywalker kind of feel. You've got this new person who's kind of trying to find the way. But having known certain things about Star Wars, you can kind of connect the dots there. But I did like the fact that, they did kind of, they assume that you do know Star Wars, so they do throw in things like the holocoms, the lightsabers, things like that. There's still a bit of mystery there and not knowing really what's going on. And in a way, you feel that you are a bit of Ezra trying to find, who is this crew? Where are they going? What is their story? Do I want to join in? I'm a bit selfish. I don't really want to have anything to do with them, but you can see his mind changing as you go through the series. I think, we did watch episode 1 and 2. I think we might watch 3 as well. Because is 3 the one with the Wookiee where they go rescue him? Yes.
I believe it is, yeah.
Yeah. We I think we watched all 3 of them, and I think at that point my son was getting a bit like, there's too much story. It would just the action bits were fun. The Wookiees, he loved them, but once they kind of went off, he just wanted us into. He liked Zeb. Mm-hmm. He really liked the gorilla, as he would call it again. But yeah, I think they do a clever way of little nuggets of Star Wars, C-3PO and R2-D2, little things that if you're not aware of this, you can kind of get hooked into it and to see where it's going to go. And again, I don't feel it was so much a children's story. I do feel that, it's getting to the point where I can easily see me starting to now consuming more Star Wars stuff down towards the comics, which I know that you kind of take a lot of the having to read the comics out. We can just listen to what they have. And that, but it's now getting to the point where I feel I'm getting hooked back into this.
Yeah, it's really nice for you to say it. It's really nice to hear because, like, what I think with Dave and some of the other people, I kind of came in at the right time because it was as Mandalorian was coming out and things, and I was like, get into Star Wars, get into Star Wars. And then when a lot of people consumed things like the Mandalorian, they're like, I need more, and I was like, here we go, here's Rebels. Then if you like that, go to Clone Wars. Then if you like that, here's some other stuff. And it's like, you want to read these bits. What's your favorite bit about Star Wars? I recommend this. So it kind of widens people up. However much content they do or don't want to consume, if there's people out there who are Star Wars fans who only watch the movies, you are still as much of a Star Wars fan as I am. There's no bigger fans of what we've consumed. As much as I would love a big badge, it's really however much you love Star Wars is how much you love Star Wars. But I do appreciate the gesture, Maff, and things. But I don't want anyone feeling like they can't. I mean, with this, as long as you've seen Star Wars Rebels, like if someone's listening and they haven't watched Star Wars Rebels, what are you doing? Go watch it. But it's as long as you've seen the original trilogy, you're completely fine. I mean, the prequels really help, especially Revenge of the Sith. But the good thing is that as you're taken along with characters who don't know fully what happened, you do actually learn along the way with them. So with that in mind with Dave, so when you, obviously, this is your second watch, so it's a rewatch for you. So it's a very different experience with a rewatch. I especially found that when I rewatched it with Megan. How did you find the first two episodes, kind of the feeling you got, and how did that kind of differ from when you first watched it? Like, what was your experience?
Well, I'll answer that in a second, but if I could just say to Maff, I mean, I felt exactly the same about feeling like a bit of a fraud, maybe, as a Star Wars fan. I've said, I'm going to bore Mike because he's probably heard me say this lots of times, but for my whole life, I've been a massive Star Wars fan. Like, I was into comic books and stuff, superheroes and whatever, but Star Wars was my thing. And so before Rise of Skywalker came out, we did, Mike and I and Chris and Scott, we did a whole build-up. So we did a whole crossover and everything. We went through all of the movies and whatever, building up to this massive crescendo. And I remember saying at the time, like, I've waited my whole life for this. This is, I've heard about this, so-called 9 different chapters and whatever. Waited my whole life for this. And then when we watched it, I was like, are you fucking kidding me? What the fuck is this? But, Mike's always been that massive Star Wars fan, when it was quite toxic as well, because it did get fairly toxic for a good while there. But, we'd be laughing about certain plot holes in the movies. And Mike would say, well, there is a comic that actually explains that. And it was only after a while we were like, I basically, Mike and I had a chat, and it's like, oh, you should really do a show that talks about all the comics, because you blow away my knowledge. I'm a massive fan, but I had no idea all this canon existed. So that's how Star Wars comics in canon initially came out. And like you, it's a bit of an easy. I've read like the Charles Soule Darth Vader run and stuff, which if you're going to read anything, read that. And a few other bits and pieces. I find the main Star Wars run I found that a bit harder.
I don't generally recommend that to people, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's not great, is it?
2021's better,
But I find now it's easier to just listen to Mike, and he gives you the whole non-spoiler version and then goes into more detail and researches all the characters, which I might just skip over. So that's all great.
Before I want to just interject, Dave, because I realised I forgot to say what the show actually was. Exactly. So, Dave, you and I both came up with it. So, Vandor, then I'll ask you a revamp of what you thought of the first 2 episodes of Rebels and things. But with Rebels Revisited, obviously, I want to do this because I love Rebels. When you I've always been wanting to do it, but with this show, the idea of it, you and I kind of came up with it together. Why did you want to start this show? And then how does that then you can kind of flow that into your rewatch of Rebels? Because you especially wanted to really want an excuse to rewatch it. And you're a bit like me, which is, if it's content you've seen before, the only way you can really fit it in with watching it is either if you have a long period of time off work, or if it's for a podcast. If it's not, it's like, I really want to rewatch this film. Has anyone done it in a podcast yet? No, they haven't. Quick, Spider-Man, could you do this movie, please? Sorry, please. Why did you specifically want to do Rebels reviewed, really?
I think Rebels and Clone Wars both make, certainly for the prequels, they make them better. And even though it's an animated show, it's an animated medium, the story, I mean, there are throwaway episodes which are just a bit, they don't have to be there, but some of the themes are so deep And actually, in particular, the prequels, I think time has really helped them. Because again, I was like a lot of people in and around my age. I was quite disappointed by it because it just wasn't Star Wars as I recognized it. But in particular, there was some stuff that's happened in the US in the last few years, with the whole insurrection and everything. You're like, it became over time more relevant. The political themes and the cleverness, and also, when I was growing up, you just thought the Jedi was like the epitome of everything. You thought Luke was fantastic, but Yoda was really the man and everything. And actually, when you retrospectively think about it, not when I was watching the prequels when they were coming out, but it's through content like this where you're thinking, well, actually, the Jedi were asleep at the wheel. They were a bit shit, really, weren't they? By the end of it. And how did they let this happen? They were the ones who shouldn't have let it happen, and just like say sleepwalked into it. So I think I'm one of those like insufferable born again Christians or something that once you've experienced it and you've discovered it, it's like, guys, you've got to watch this. This is really good. And to coin Mike's phrase, it's possibly one of the best Star Wars content that's out there. So, it's just when it was coming up in Andor. I mean, that's the other thing that helps with your case as well, isn't it? The fact that Andor is in and around the same kind of time period, and people were watching it and like, this is fucking brilliant. And it's like, well, if you think this is brilliant, Rebels is pretty damn good, and it's in and around the same space as well. So, helping other people understand that it's not just all about Luke Skywalker and Anakin Skywalker and Ben Kenobi and whoever, that ultimately, they got the glory shots, didn't they? Right at the end there generally, but there's a whole system and, the Empire and what that's doing and how clever it was to set up. And, you need these quote unquote rebels, and they don't all necessarily get along. I just think it's so clever. And I guess, they had to do it as an animated, just budget constraints and whatever, but it's just so well done. And like I say, the writing is so much more than what you would think as just an after-school cartoon.
Mm-hmm. And how did you feel going in and watching those first two episodes again after? Because it's been a while, hasn't it? It's been a few years since you watched Rebels.
It was probably lockdown number one.
It was around the time I started the show, wasn't it? I think.
Yeah, it was a while ago. And going into it this time, so you start off with the first one, and you're sort of thinking, well, I haven't read any of the Dave Filoni quotes or anything, but I mean, did he literally just watch Aladdin and then start sketching the story for this first one? Because it seems to be Ezra Miller basically is Aladdin, isn't he? To me, he is anyway. Exactly, he looks like him. He's a street rat kind of thing. He's very wily, can handle himself, get by himself. But then that first episode is about this chance coming together with this group. So again, I felt like that bit was, quite not forced. Well, yeah, it's probably a little bit forced. But then I'm okay. I'm good to go with it. It's when you get further into the season that you get more of the lore, more of what's really going on, and the stuff that makes you think. And that's where I think I've done it again. I binged it again. But actually, I should have a bit more discipline and slow down. So not for all the episodes, but the one with the more deeper kind of thought-provoking stuff. I think I maybe before we do season 2, I might actually binge this again with some deliberate pauses in between the episodes. So,
yeah.
But yeah, I thought it was great. But what I would say though about the second episode, in the second one, I just didn't really feel like C-3PO and R2-D2 had to be there. I felt it was a bit fan servicey.
Yeah.
But I was trying to think, okay, is that because they felt like they had to do that stuff? I mean, I don't know. Did you ever watch Droids? I mean, there was so much
I've
Star Wars
seen
content.
I've seen it, and it's a lot of people hold droids and Ewoks in high regard. I've only seen bits and pieces of it, but I know that C-3PO blinks in it, and it always freaked me out because it doesn't make any sense why he blinks. But yeah. I was not overly a fan of what I saw, but I was quite young. It was ages ago. But I know some people absolutely love it. Some people aren't a fan. But I know it's quite cheesy, and it's not serious in a lot of ways. It's just this kind of. It's definitely of its era of the 80s.
It's stuff for me. It's like. It probably came out in and
Kinda
around
goofy.
about the same time as Caravan of Courage.
Yeah.
You know, it just wasn't. It wasn't the best. I'm not going to go back unless I'm forced to and watch it because I want it. In my memory, it's not too bad, but I've got a feeling if I go back and watch it, it'll be pretty bad. But yeah, I mean, it was all around them. It was all around R2-D2 and C-3PO and hanging about with Ewoks and stuff. So yeah, when they showed up here, I was like, you've done a great job in the first episode of introducing these different characters, and it's all your main archetypes, isn't it? You know, you've got Zeb as the grumpy, but lovable original Wookiee design. You've got Kanan, he's like your Ben Kenobi type. You've got Ezra, who's your Luke Skywalker. So I thought he did a good job of throwing them all together. And then I think episode 2 is probably one of those throwaway ones for me.
Yeah, because episode 1 and 2 is the Spark of the Rebellion special, but episode 3 is the one with the droids, droid in distress with the R2 and 3PO one. So that's it's one of those weird things. Depending on where you look, episode 2, some places is the droids one, as you're discussing, but in other places, it's part 1 and episode 1 and episode 2. So in any case, I still completely agree. And so that'll lead us on. Then we'll talk about sort of people popping up and cameos and things. We'll get into sort of the main characters and things in a moment. But I'll ask. So Maff, obviously, when you start watching this, a whole new host of characters, which is quite interesting. But what did you think of some of the appearances from familiar faces? We've got R2 and 3PO, as Dave's just mentioned. We've got Lando, who I adore in anything. We've got Tarkin, and then you've got the holocron of Obi-Wan Kenobi. So what did you think of a lot of these, and obviously Vader as well? What do you think of these appearances and cameos? How do you think they worked in the story? Do you find that they made you more invested in this new content, or did you find you drew back a little bit? What are your kind of thoughts on those?
The holocron, I quite like the fact that what they did with that, where they had Obi-Wan appear on the holocron, a bit like Princess Leia does for Obi-Wan further down the line. I love R2. C-3PO is he's always been a bit frustrating. And that... Again, I feel they're put in so there's a familiarity of Star Wars. Even though we are learning a whole new crew, they're just putting little breadcrumbs there of, these are characters that you already know. So if we throw them in there, you're going to feel like, okay, I know this universe. Lando, yes, I like Lando again. He's, in fact, I quite enjoy that episode. I just felt like they got completely played in that. It was typical Lando though, kind of as if he's completely set them up here. He knows they're going to lose, so he can get them to do what he wants to do. And I know we're going to jump around the episodes a little bit. Even when they go off and they think they've got one over on him, he's like, haha. Again, it's like he's planned it all out. And that's your typical kind of... To be fair, it's a bit unfortunate we don't get enough of him in the movies. And that's what... Now, I'm assuming that he's going to probably show up more in season 2, 3, and 4. Hopefully, because whether he does not, I don't know.
Reveal nothing of anything to do with series 2 to 4. You can pose all the questions you want, and you'll get the same answer, which is nothing at all.
Damn it. And that, but I mean, again, they do like to put little things in there so that you still feel you're in the Star Wars universe. But I enjoy the fact that yes, you are getting a brand new crew. You have got Ezra, Luke Skywalker. Zeb is Chewie. It's funny with you saying Kalen Bean, Obi-Wan. He's a cross between Obi-Wan and Han to a certain degree. But then it's like Hera seems to be more the guiding, the one who she's got her head screwed on. She's the boss, to be fair. She's the one who kind of she calls the shots an awful lot. She knows how to kind of play people, not in a bad way, but to get the best out of people. I did like Sabine. I don't know where I would fit her in to the general arc there, but again, it's amusing the fact that Ezra's kind of, you see Sabine and he's like, you know, he gets some Love Eyes kind of thing of, oh, you know, I'm gonna try show off to her, and she's having none of it.
Yeah,
but it's Ezra and Zeb's relationship. You can see where that's going to go. You can see that kind of bickering siblings to a certain degree, and even with Chopper in there as well. I think he's again. There's a lot kind of thrown at you straight away, but it don't feel like it's overwhelming. And the I've lost me. The holocron is like you were saying there, Dave, about Aladdin. Holocron's like the lamp. This is the thing that's gonna, you know, he's gonna rub this to get his power to a certain degree, because it kind of, I mean, it leads further on into the episodes, which I quite enjoy, because for all I've said that, I probably didn't think I was as much of a Star Wars fan. I've played the games. I've played Force Unleashed and Knights of the Old Republic's one of the greatest Star Wars games I've ever played, but could be one of the greatest games for the story wise. So it's nice that they do dip back into these other things. They keep this universe, and they like to just people, whether you're big fans or where you come from, there's always something you can kind of grab and know where they're going with it.
Yeah, very good points. So we'll delve into the main crew then. We've sort of spoken about the cameos, unless, Dave, there was something specific you want to add on the cameo element of what we're just saying. Cool. So so we'll speak about the crew themselves. So I want to share my screen and show yourselves one of the here it is, the Ralph McQuarrie concept art that they used a lot for Star Wars. So for Star Wars Rebels, and they used it a bit in Mandalorian, they've used some old concept art that Ralph McQuarrie used. Now you can see here that on the screen, these characters resemble Star Wars Rebels. Now the one that was Chewie, which is the concept art for Chewbacca, that turned into obviously Wookiees, but Zeb is a Lasat. And one of the fun things about the Star Wars canon is Lasats often get confused with Wookiees, and that's actually what happens in one of the episodes in this season, because they came from the same concept art, which is one of those really clever, just little levels of things. You can see here sort of in the bottom right that you've got an R2-D2 unit with an arm coming out, which obviously in the original trilogy, R2 doesn't have that coming out the side. And it's that kind of element of, and there's also a woman pilot there down the front, and it's like that's more like what Hera is. So you've got these elements of the concept art that they use that I love that element. I just, when I go into that, and there's loads of other ones that I won't say because we're not there yet and I don't want to spoil things in the future, but the use of that in universe, I adore. So with the characters themselves and the design, I think they all balance each other out, and as the series unfolds, there are more, the depth of the relationships become more intense. You can kind of tell certain things about them, which I love. And, you know, I often say in podcasts that Kanan is my favorite character in almost any Star Wars or any content outside of Star Wars. I absolutely adore him. And one of the things I love the most about Kanan specifically is because he is a flawed person and a flawed master. He, as much as I love some of the characters, like Yoda in a lot of Star Wars is kind of perceived as this never wrong being. But as the High Republic starts to explore a lot of people, and this says it a little bit when there's some training, when obviously Yoda pops up and things, it's the kind of nod to it a few episodes before. You've got Kanan, and he's like, do or do not, there is no try. And Ezra's like, what does that even mean? And Kanan's like, Master Yoda used to say it quite a lot. I don't really know. And in like the High Republic, there's little nods where when they're not around Yoda for a while, they're like, Yoda always says this thing, and it's like, what does that mean? It's like, I don't know. He just said it all the time. I thought you knew. He just sounds really wise when he says it. I don't always understand him, and that kind of idea where Kanan is a real person. And as much as I love like Obi-Wan Kenobi and things, when you see him, especially in A New Hope, he just seems like he's like almost like an ethereal being. He just kind of floats through everything, and he's in command of everything. And obviously, Alec Guinness is a brilliant actor, and he's so well spoken and in the scene and everything like that. Whereas Kanan is this Han Solo-esque type Jedi who's, you don't really know much about his past, and you don't know about that Maff. You've only got little snippets of it thus far. And as that starts to unravel as well, you get more knowing of why he's the way he is. So Kanan is my favorite character. If I go to you, then Dave, obviously, your favourite character for the whole season might be different from your favourite character from season 1, but you can say both if they are different characters. But any sort that stand out to you, and it can be goodies or baddies.
I mean, I do like Kanan, but since you've chose him, I'll go different. I'd have to go Chopper, I think, because, and I don't know, maybe I'm influenced by later seasons as well, but, R2-D2's a little bit cheeky. But Chopper just takes that to a different level, I think. He's got so much personality. And, for someone who doesn't have any actual dialogue as such, I just think the way they kind of animate him, the way he moves, and the little sounds that he makes and stuff. And like you say, he's got the little arm. I've never seen that picture, by the way. That was awesome. So, yeah, I'm going to go Chopper.
That's a very good choice. And also with Chopper, it's funny because he's even older than R2. Because when R2 meets him in episode 3, or episode 2, depending, the droid's one that Dave mentioned, he calls him an old droid. And there is other content that you can see as well. You get to see him even sort of younger and things. And he is from sort of pre-Clone Wars era. And obviously R2 was around a little bit before the Phantom Menace. So Maff, obviously you mentioned your characters you like a little bit, but any sort of ones that really do stand out, or any that you actually haven't warmed to yet?
I do like Zeb. I do like, but could be controversial. Callus. I do like Callus. I do like the fact that he obviously is wanting to hunt him down, and you can see that he's trying to think several steps ahead of them all the time, and he's trying to outsmart them, and unfortunately, a lot of luck. To be fair, whether it's the Force, who knows? But I do like the fact that Callison, each time he's on, it's weird, and you kind of rooting for him in a way, and that, and you can see the fact that he just seems to get the bad end of the stick all the time. But I do quite enjoy him an awful lot, and as I say, Zeb as well. I like that. Zeb comes across as the middle child when the youngest is born, and it's like, oh, I'm not the baby anymore, kind of thing, and you can tell that he does like Ezra, but he really likes to take the mick. He really likes to kind of wind him up and that. But then it's amusing. Whenever there's anyone else there, there's always a little bit of conflict, a little bit of kind of putting him down. When them two are together, they're quite tight together. We have the episode with the TIE fighter when they go steal the TIE fighter. Again, you see that bonding moment between them, and it's really nice. And again, I think Ezra at this point, he's not unlikable, but he's not the character that I were kind of rooting for as such. And I know we're following his story along more than anything else, but he just he feels like a bit of a plot point just to kind of move us through. And I'm assuming as the seasons go on, we're going to kind of grow into, because we are growing with him and we're trying to learn it all. But I do feel sometimes Ezra's the weak point of the episodes.
Yeah, I agree. It is something that, in my opinion, does change over time, and I think that's one of the things, because Ahsoka is a little bit like that as well, which is in the Clone Wars, and so she's a character that grows with it. So if we ever go back to the Clone Wars things, you can kind of see that. But obviously, with Ezra, at the end of this season, you saw him get a scratch on his cheek, the 2 sort of scratches. He has that now. That's part of his face permanently, and every season there is an update, both in how good the animation is, but also the characters go through change in each season, and you actually see it, which that little scratch may not seem like a lot, but over time you kind of see differences and things, which I really enjoy as well. And it's funny you say about Callus, because obviously he's part of the ISB, and the ISB obviously is a central part of Andor, and it's like, whenever people are like, I love that part of Andor, I say, it was in Rebels first. It's like, I mean, I know, I'm pretty certain it was all in Legends before any of that, but in the canon, it's like on the screen, it was actually, and there is a lot more to it. It's in like 1 or 2 rooms in Rebels, because obviously animating stuff is like, it just seems to always take place in one of their offices and nowhere else, the ISB business. But I really like that element, and I find that one thing I love about the air quotes baddies, when I say air quotes baddies, I don't like saying goodies and baddies, but I realize we have a name for them. They're the Empire. When you have the majority of Empire characters, you've got a couple that stand out. You've got the Minister Woman, then you've got kind of one of the main officers, and the sort of bigger officer, the skinny face one, and the bigger one. And obviously you've got Callus and things. But then the majority of the other ones, when you see just an officer randomly on one of the sort of missions that's out somewhere, they've got their cap down to a certain level, so you can't see their face. And it's just that when you've got a lot of them at stations, they all kind of look the same. They're the same model. Obviously, cutting corners because of animation, but it actually works in the story, because it's like they're all just faceless beings. They're all the same. They're all identical, and we're literally going to make them identical as well. So I really like the way they use these elements of things. And one thing I want to bring up is the sort of the lightsabers and the lightsaber battles and things, because this is something that some people find quite jarring, because the lightsabers in this are a lot thinner than they look in other styles content, which is intriguing. One thing that is a standout for me as well, a moment, so feel free to sprinkle these in throughout the conversation if you think of any that are standouts, is 22 pickup, which is at the end of the sort of first episode special, when you get a lot of hints that Kanan is a Jedi and things, and then it's like, oh, I want to do a 22 pickup. And even this time when I watched it, I've seen it several times before, and even this time it's like a 22 pickup. And he's like, what's a 22 pickup? It's like, here we go. And then when it happens, it's just this cool moment where it's Ezra's world blows open. And it kind of, that's how I felt watching it. When I was watching Rebels the first time, I was like, I'm getting into this. This is cool. I'm enjoying this, but how am I going to feel about a show that hasn't got much of the Force? Because that's my favorite part of it, This is going to be a spiritual successor show to the Clone Wars in a way, so how's that going to work? And then that happened, and I was like, oh my god, yes, all of that, I want it. So with the lightsabers and that element itself, Maff, do you want to tell us a little bit about how you found the lightsabers and the action set pieces as well, specifically? How you kind of felt about, the action set pieces, including lightsabers?
The thing is, I don't have as much kind of from the Clone Wars and things like that. I've not really watched them, so it's not been really much of an issue. I can remember being little Maff and my dad coming home with a lightsaber, which was basically, it was a blue torch with a giant plastic, like giant light fitting kind of on it. And obviously the films as well. It didn't really it wasn't jarring to me. I just thought, when we first saw Kanan with the lightsaber in his quarters, I thought, oh, now I already assumed he was Force sensitive, obviously with the show being what it was. It's interesting the fact that one good thing about Kanan is, he's a Jedi. He's Ezra's master. He's so flawed, and he doesn't believe in himself to be able to do this. And the fact that it's a learning process for Ezra, and it's a learning process for him as well, which, we have several times in in these episodes where he doesn't want to do this. He tries to push Ezra off onto someone else. the action, I quite enjoy it. I mean, it's not. It's a lot better than Yoda bouncing around fighting General Grievous. Is it
Count Dooku?
Oh, right. Okay, there we go. See, I'm not a Star Wars fan, but again, it's animation, so they can get away with a lot more because of what it is. But it flowed quite well. I quite enjoyed it. And it's nice the fact we have episodes where there's a lot of action in it, and then there's episodes where, although you could argue other filler episodes, it's a bit more kind of learn the characters. There's the one episode with it's just mainly her and Sabine on the planet where it ties in, we go back to it later on. At first I thought, oh, this is just not really going anywhere, but you learn that relationship, and you learn the fact that Hera is now starting to trust this person that she didn't before. So we do have these action scenes which are, Star Wars are action scenes, so you enjoy them. But it's nice the fact that, again, for technically a kids program, there's a lot more depth to it. It's like that argument I have with pantomimes. Pantomimes are for kids. They are, but if you actually watch pantomime, you realise how rude they are and how much there is there for the adults, like Shrek and things like that. There's so much there that they're aware that adults are going to sit with the kids to watch these things. So there's stuff there for the children, but there's stuff there for the adults that keep them tied in and keep them interested, so that they will sit down with the kids and go, do you know what? Yeah, let's watch Rebels.
Mm-hmm. And Dave, what do you kind of think about all that?
I think there is a lot of saucy innuendo in pantomimes. I agree. I remember taking my kids and I was like, I don't remember this from pantomimes when I was a kid. But yeah, they've probably always been like that. You just don't notice it when you were a kid. I thought the action was really good, and I don't know, I'd never really picked up on the fact that the lightsabers are thinner. Again, I think I'm possibly more forgiving. When you're growing up in the 80s, like, most of the stuff is pretty shit. And in fact, I like, in terms of animation and special effects and stuff, you have a few great standouts, but there was a lot of crap as well. I'll go back to the original Star Wars, the original New Hope, before it's all touched up and everything. There's a few moments where Obi-Wan's showing down with Darth Vader, and the lightsaber's almost head on looking at the camera, and it looked really weird. I think I've watched it more recently. It's obviously been all digitally touched up and stuff, but whatever effect they were using for that, I always remember, even years ago, when you're watching it on the VHS, like, oh, that looks really crap. But you don't take to message boards and or Twitter or social media or whatever and say, oh, it looks a bit weird, that it's a bit crap in it, and then it feeds a negativity into the world then, doesn't it? Whereas, like I say, when you're just watching it at home, it's just a thing you notice and then it's gone. You're on to enjoying the movie. So yeah, I think with some of the characters, like the Inquisitor, the way he's sort of shaped, it's very stylized. It's not supposed to reflect. It's not supposed to be like photorealistic. It's not supposed to be exactly like the films. I mean, part of that might be, I think part of it is budget, but part of it is just the style of it. So yeah, I just, with the lightsabers, I took it as that. And yeah, I thought the action was really good. And I think, like I say, the classic Star Wars sound design as well. I thought the sound was on par with the films, and I think that really pulls you into the universe.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And so let's get into the standout moments and also standout episodes, if you can remember them, because obviously there were 16 in this, and there's more in the next two seasons. I think are 22, and then I think the finale is 15 or 16 as well. So there's not a huge amount, whereas Clone Wars, there's a lot. But standout elements and parts that you enjoyed. Obviously, I said about the 22 pickup is one of my favourites, but linking in with that, is something I liked, which is kind of linking what we were just speaking about, the action scenes and things, is with Kanan and the Grand Inquisitor. Now, a lot of this journey, a lot of Rebels in general, as the whole season, which obviously I'm not going to spoil elements of it, but this season 1, as well as the whole show, it's meant to, on the surface, it looks like it's Ezra's journey, but it's actually every character's journey. And Kanan, as kind of Maff touched upon earlier, he is one of the central points that I connect with. And he's the kind of person that when you watch him grow, and you can watch it across everything, how he interacts with Ezra, how he interacts with the rest of the crew, even Chopper and things, how he goes out on missions and things, his interactions with the Hera. But when he fights the Grand Inquisitor, every time he fights him, it's different. And it's different because Kanan is adapting and learning and becoming more, letting the Force flow through him, not holding back as much, not hiding who he is and this potential behind him. And you see it that after he speaks with Yoda, which I loved when Yoda was in it. I was just like, when I was watching this the first time, I was like, this show is amazing. And then they go to a Jedi temple and I was like, Jedi stuff, incredible. And then Yoda's voice, and I'm like, I don't care how many shows they can fit Yoda into. I'm having it. I'm happy. I like hearing Yoda, and when he's used sparingly, which he was. I really liked his use in this. And I just think after that conversation, both Ezra and Kanan really grow, and they learn, and there's that really dark part with Kanan and when he searches for Luminara Unduli, who is a character who's basically a background character in the movies, but has a couple of talking lines in the Clone Wars, but like a couple more than that. But it's just this journey of Kanan. I think the battles with the Grand Inquisitor really show each time. I think it's 4 or 5 times they fight. Every time you show growth in Kanan. And obviously in the final time where he really feels himself, he beats him. And I just love that element. So if I go to you then, Dave, favourite sort of either scenes or episodes in particular, or just parts of this, the real parts that made you enjoy season 1?
Kind of wishing I didn't watch it about 6 weeks ago now.
Next time we'll watch them a lot close together.
That's quite all right. No, so I don't know if I have real standout moments. I think one of the things I really like about this season, though, I do think, like I say, when it starts off, it's kind of like Aladdin runs into the A-team, and then that's it. They go off, and everything comes really easily because when you experience a story, they did this on Walking Dead, right? Because they'll like in season 3 they'll discover, oh right, if I cover myself in zombie guts, the zombies won't smell me. And it took them like 3 seasons to figure that out. And then when they had the spin-off show Fear of the Walking Dead, that group have nailed it in like episode 3, never mind season 3. And I always found that a bit weird. And with this as well, everything, it feels like, to me, it just comes a bit easy. You know, even Ezra tapping into the Force and stuff. If you look at A New Hope, the Force did not come easy to Luke. You know, he's doing the old practicing in the Millennium Falcon, and he's a bit shit, really. He keeps getting zapped, doesn't he? And then at the end, you know, he hears Ben, but it's a bit ambiguous, isn't it? Did that just give him the confidence to take the shot, or was he using the Force? It's like it's just tapping into it. You know, it's like a little drip out of the tap. Whereas Ezra, you know, a couple of episodes in, he's turned the tap right down. So that jars with me a little bit, but I get it. You can't just retread the same steps and go at the same pace. People know this and they're familiar with it, so just kind of get on with it. But I like how the season gets darker. So it starts off with that real, I want to find a better word because it sounds like I'm being negative, but I'm not. But like juvenile, like a young feel
Naive
to it.
Almost.
Yeah. And then I think, you know, especially when you get Grand Moff Tarkin, I mean, he's a fucking great baddie, isn't he? You've got to have Darth Vader at the top of the tree for me as your best baddies, but Grand Moff Tarkin is a twat as well, and I love him. You know, such a well, he's English, isn't he? So he's obviously a baddie. So yeah, but just the smoothness, the calmness, he's all collected. Him popping up, I thought was great. Weirdly, a couple of episodes that do stand out for me. When so breaking ranks, when Ezra goes undercover I felt like that was quite a different episode because that was less about the ensemble group then, wasn't it? And it was more about just him, and it was quite a, considering he's just been a street rat, it's quite a departure to suddenly you're an undercover spy kind of thing. I thought that was pretty cool. And the other one with Hera and Sabine, when they end up on that planet, when you've got the aliens who you probably remember the names of, but I don't.
I can't remember, but I think Maff was talking about them earlier, where they go
Yeah.
back to it, don't they?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they obviously they can't go into the light, so they have to live in the shadows, in the dark and stuff. It felt to me like there was a real peril there. Like actually, someone could die here. Maybe not both of them, but maybe one of them. And so I think that might have even been the turning point where I was like, oh, hang about. This isn't just like, 4 o'clock when you're back from school, make yourself a sandwich and then watch cartoons. So yeah, that one, I don't think they're the best episodes. I think as the season goes on, let's face it, when the Grand Inquisitor's around, he's not the Grand Inquisitor, is he? He's just
No,
an
he is.
Inquisitor. Is he the Grand Inquisitor?
In this season, he's the Grand Inquisitor.
So, I think when he turns up, those are probably the best or my favorite episodes. But yeah, the ones that stick out in my mind, like I say, those other two, just for different reasons, because they're a bit more different than the other ensemble episodes.
Mm-hmm. And I will say, I looked it up. They're called Fernox, these creatures, and they were first in Out of the Darkness, so that episode of Rebels, and they've appeared in a little bit here and there, sort of in the past of the canon. But in the canon, that's where they first came out. But there were sort of versions of them in one place in a game, the Star Wars Old Republic, the Cartel Market in that game. So they've been in one other place that's not really the same. They are standing out in the sun and stuff. So they've kind of taken the name of a beast that's quite different. But yeah, fair enough. And so, Maff, with yourself, sort of standout episodes and elements of Rebels.
I think episode 8, I think it is. It's the one with Sebo. Is it Sebo? Am I saying that right?
Oh, yes, yeah, the Rhodian who's got the cybernetic thing about him. Yes.
I think that was a good one because at that point, like I said, Ezra, that whiny kid, we're getting to the point where it was getting a little bit annoying, and then you can understand why he's got this hard shell and this. He doesn't want to get close to anyone because of his parents, and you can see the desperation of him trying to find out what's happened to his parents, and that he's willing to kind of give everything up to kind of follow this and help this person that he sees as he knew were his parents' friend. So I quite enjoyed the fact that, again, you're learning a bit more about him, you're getting a bit more depth to him, you're getting to the point where you're actually caring about him, as opposed to him just being this wannabe Luke Skywalker. So I quite enjoyed that one. And then I think it might be the next episode where they then end up back on the planet with the Fernox. And Kanan and the Inquisitor are fighting, and Kanan gets injured to the point where you think, oh, this is going to go bad. And you see the dark side come from Ezra as he calls the Mummy Beast up, and she comes and takes the Inquisitor, and they escape. Again, that's a bit where I suppose it's easier for him to explore the dark side for Ezra, and it's that balance now that he's having to kind of fight with, which he could quite easily go one way or the other, I suppose, at this point. And I think that's a part where Kanan kind of realizes that I need to step in at this point. I need to. So a few episodes before, when he tried to give Luma the plan was he was going to get Luma to train him, and he was just going to go about his merry way and not have to deal with the Force. So it's you're starting to kind of understand where these characters are all coming from, and they're all broken, and that's why they work quite well together. The fact that they are so they rely on each other a lot more than what they probably give each other credit. And that's why it's a team that's kind of coming together and it's working really well.
Yeah, I think Hera's the only one who truly sees the value of each other. I think she's the one, she's the vision. I mean, Hera's, the goddess, the queen of the gods. She's the mother in the Greek mythology. That's her kind of jam. So the name suits her, and she is one of my all-time favorite characters as well. I absolutely love her. But again, with a lot of the stuff, me and Dave are having to hold back because it's like there's certain reasons we like certain characters, but we can't tell you that, Maff, or any of the listeners who are sort of watching along on things. But yeah, Ezra's journey especially is something that I really enjoy. Something you both sort of touched on, and is foray into the dark side, and obviously that element has not been resolved this season, and there's 3 more seasons to go, so we'll see what elements of that kind of come up again. And as you say, Kanan really had to learn to kind of step in and be a part of that. And one thing I want to note about Ezra, funnily enough, is he was born around 1 or 2 days before Luke/Leia. So he is basically the same age as them. But I think that what they've kind of done with him is show that he grew up with his parents till he was young, but then he was by himself for a long period of time, Whereas Luke had kind of the inverse. He had kind of this cushy life. He was kind of somewhat repressed, and he didn't get to connect with the Force because he was doing some stuff that was so, I imagine, mind-numbing with, going out and moisture farming. It's not very stimulating. So I imagine like using the Force wasn't really necessary because there's not really those scenarios that occur that you need it. Whereas if you're by yourself and you're starving basically, unless you can get this fruit, you're going to almost die if you don't do this thing. The Force can kind of call to you and guide you in certain ways because you kind of need it. Whereas Luke didn't need it. He had a cushy life with his aunt and uncle. And so I think that they kind of did the inverse, whereas Luke kind of started with a family and kind of found his own way in the universe. Ezra was kind of like he found how to survive by himself, which Luke was somewhat lacking. And he then had to learn how to work with other people. He had to let people see the real him and accept others so that they could accept him. And he had a lot of that baggage and a lot of like abandonment issues. And as you said, Maff, in that episode with Sibo, it was that you saw that vulnerability with him. You saw him kind of saying, I just want to be by myself. And they're all like, and Kanan's like, I want to, and Hera's like, come on, just let him have a bit of time. And some people are pushing and some people aren't. And then Sabine has that moment where she kind of realizes what's happening, and that like, he was born on Empire Day, and all these sort of parts around Ezra that he's kind of trying to hold on to. And I really like that. I love that element. I love the growth, and I think it's really good for young viewers as well as just for adults and things. So just a couple more things of positivity, because we start to sort of towards the end. We've got a few more bits to go through. But I've obviously noted Ezra's growth and things. But one little funny side thing I quite like is that on Empire Day, which is a canon thing, which is, the day the Empire took over, they play the Imperial March, but they play it in a major instead of in either original or minor. But so you play it in a higher octave, so it's more upbeat, and this is kind of marching band feel to the Imperial March. And I love the fact they've canonized that. That's just so fun to me. That's one of those fun little things where in the universe, if you played the arguably the most famous Star Wars theme to anyone in the Star Wars universe, 2 of them, you've got Figure It Down in the Modal Odes, I think it's Wild About Me is the name of the song in the Cantina. You play that song, it's like a canon song, and now the Imperial Marches. So it's little things like that I really, really enjoyed. And there's quite a few quotes as well that I quite enjoyed. I'm just going to say one out of them, which is, it's Hera, and it's from episode 1. And this is one of the things that kind of convinces Ezra to really change his ways. And it's, if all you do is fight for your own life, then your life is worth nothing. And it's like, that's quite a powerful thing to say to someone who is, I think he's about 14. It's like his 14th birthday in one of the episodes. So it's like, that's quite a lot to put on this kid, but also it's really a sign to show, right, you've survived by yourself. Now it's time to kind of be around others. So I've just spoken a lot about that. So any kind of more stand-up things, I'll go with you sort of, Maff. Any other things that you found elevated, little moments or anything else you want to mention?
I enjoyed when they stole the TIE fighter.
Did you like when they painted it and stuff as well?
Yeah, that comes back. I mean, it's even to start with. And is that the one where they go and try to rescue the farmers who have been captured by the Empire?
I think that's when they get the TIE fighter. That's when they steal it, and then they need to go back and get it to break in at some point.
Yeah, and it's like, it doesn't quite look like a TIE fighter.
Yeah.
And then you see it, and it's basically being graffitied, and I just thought, I really enjoyed that. It's this weapon of destruction is now looks like a Justin Pollock kind of.
It's like a teenager's race car in it.
Yeah, it was nice, but again, that's one of them things where you have Ezra and Zeb. It's like the big brother, little brother kind of thing. Whereas, they're like nudging each other, kind of, oh dear, oh, we're gonna get in trouble here and that. But it's that's one of there's a family atmosphere to the crew, and that you're starting to kind of see. Empire Day, that was one of them ones as well, where you start realizing again, you start feeling a bit more for Ezra. You start understanding where he's coming from and why he's had a bit of a shit life. Like you say, Luke had a cushy life, Ezra didn't, and I suppose the Force has probably always been with him, and he's just not realised he's been using it. But now he has a way to channel it. It's him as when he gets the kyber crystal. I do like how he constructs his own lightsaber from that.
I love his lightsaber.
Not
I love it so much.
What I expected.
No, it's nothing like anyone's ever seen before. I think it's one of my all-time favourite lightsaber designs. I think it is just genius. Sorry.
Yeah, because I think I mentioned to you, and I said, "Oh, why do they not make kyber cannons or something like that?" He said, "Well, they do.
It's in the comics."
Well, it makes a bit of a mess.
Yeah.
And that, but yeah, I do like the fact that it's thinking outside the box. He's used to using a blaster, but then he's incorporated this lightsaber, which gives him, it gives him options there.
Because they don't need to be because they need to be incognito, I think, is a part of it as well, which is an element you don't get to see. If you haven't played Jedi Fallen Order, there's not really much, and aside from Kenobi, really, but Kenobi flashes it around constantly. But it's like that idea of when you're a Jedi, you kind of have to hide. And I think his lightsaber helps that. Because he gets it out and Kenny's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, shoot. And he's like, "Mine doesn't do that."
There's an element of jealousy there. Well, yeah, I mean, Fallen Order is a brilliant game. And the fact that as you go along, I mean, I hope at some point they do something more with Cal
Kestis. There's a new game coming out in
I know there's a new game.
2 months.
Hoping
and there's a book.
They may do, whether they do something live action or whether they do something animated with him, because I think it deserves that. I
think they probably do a trilogy of games, and then if he survives the end of that, they might bring him into it, but we shall see. Is there anything else to add on that front, Maff, before we ask Dave for his final good points?
I suppose most people who listen to this probably know a lot more about the series than what I do. So I've heard Ahsoka. I know what she looks like, and I know she's more from Clone Wars than from this. So that's a character that is revealed at the end of the last episode of this. As I said, I don't really know much about her. I know she's getting a TV show herself. So I'm interested to see that. I know you're not going to tell me anything, so there's no point really asking this, but I don't know whether is it worth kind of probably finishing off Rebels and then going to Clone Wars, or where to kind of pick her from, because I think obviously she's going to probably be a big part of the next few seasons. But again, it's here as kind of she's playing them to be able to kind of build this rebel resistance and that, and obviously we see this dark hooded character that we don't know who they are, but then it's revealed that it's Ahsoka. I quite like that, even though I'm aware of who she is, but I'm not really aware of who she is, but I'm not aware of who she is in a way, because I don't know the character. And then at the very end, spoilers again, Darth Vader. It's it's that thing where you even just you see him just for a little bit, it's like, oof, oof, they're in trouble.
Brilliant. So Dave, you got any comments on that as well, especially with Ahsoka? Because obviously you watched. Obviously, we won't say anything post Rebels, but what are your thoughts on the Ahsoka comments, and then your sort of final good parts of Rebels?
Well, Ahsoka does appear, first of all, in the Clone Wars movie, so I think you should watch that.
To be fair, that does explain who she is. I wonder, Dave, is it they reveal who she is in this, I think, as it goes on, but is it better for Maff to know?
I don't think you have to know anything. No? I think
Okay.
The good thing that these series do, it allows you to watch this self-contained story. And especially with this series, if you just jump in at episode 1, you can watch it, and actually you see as you progress through the season, you see the change in the characters. So it rewards you from starting from episode 1. But if you were to just, wander in and you caught an episode, you just see some cool animation, Star Wars sounds, people fighting with laser swords and whatever, you can still watch that self-contained episode. I think the more of this animated Star Wars content that you watch, though, it rewards you for watching it, because stuff pops up and you're like, oh, I know who that is, Ahsoka. Oh, we met her in Clone Wars or whatever, and so I think it doesn't. It's not like some criticism of the MCU, for the last few years really has been that people who have lost track of it are like, oh, what is this one? Do I have to have watched 20 movies before I watch this next one? It becomes a barrier then from getting into it. But I don't think there's no homework. You just have to know Ahsoka is another character. She's an established character in this Star Wars universe. That's it. I don't think you need to watch anything else. I watched, so canonically, Clone Wars does happen before Rebels, but I watched Rebels first as well. I watched all 4 seasons of Rebels, and then I was like, I need more. There's no more? What's going on? And then that's what led me on to Clone Wars.
And you get rewarded as well. I won't say any spoilers, but there's certain things that happen in both Clone Wars and Rebels in animation that have and will be coming out in live action. As obviously you're aware, Maff, because you mentioned there's the Ahsoka series, which is going to be happening at some point. But yeah, so with that, sorry, Dave, so any sort of final positive points we may not have yet touched on before we start to wrap up? I'll ask what the predictions as well for Maff as well after this, but sorry.
Yeah. So I guess I'd kind of forgotten. So only going through it the once and then coming back and going through it the second time, it's amazing how much they pack into a single season. And again, considering where, some of the episodes are a little bit filler, and you kind of watch it and you're like, I don't really know how did that move things forward? Like I say, you seem to have some episodes which are just a bit of fun, and you're like, they're a bit thin on any kind of plot. But then I prefer the episodes that drive things forward. You learn something about a particular character, and that changes the way that you view them, and things like that. So, yeah, I don't think it. I think the seasons after this just get better and better. So this is probably the toughest watch, to get into. From here on in, though, I mean, you can probably tell from the last few episodes, things start to get quite heavy, from a story point of view and everything. And I can't actually wait to get into season 2. Yeah,
it's one of those things where it basically the highest points in this season are what most of the midpoints are in the subsequent seasons. That's how I'd compare it. So most episodes going forward are as good as the best episodes in this season. That's generally how it is.
The one thing I would like to say, you say about I did feel that some of them was a little bit filler episodes. However, the one that we said, Out of the Darkness one with Hera and Sabine, where they go back to the planet and the aliens kind of get part of the story where they use them. it got me thinking that maybe some of the episodes that felt like filler in this, maybe then lead further down the line. It's like the Lando one. It seemed a bit of well, we're just going to put Lando in and that. It didn't feel like it pushed the story on really that much more, but maybe that might, again, I know you're not going to tell me, but maybe that might come into play in season 2 or 3 or 4, watching them and thinking about them now, like I say, I do feel that although that some of those episodes did feel like they wasn't really going anywhere, I'm now wondering, is this just a setup so that further down the line you can think, oh, that was earlier and that's why that's here now. So I don't know.
No, of course, and it's one of those. It's and there's a lot more story to go because this is all just introducing these characters. Now you know who they all are. The Grand Inquisitor as well. When the series starts, you're like, oh, they're going to be the big bad, and then by the end of the series, you're like, oh, okay.
Well, it's interesting because I thought Callus were going to be the big bad, and then Inquisitor comes along and it's like, oh, okay, there's someone else, and then at the end of episode 15, we see Darth Vader, and then it's like, ooh. It's same as Tarkin. We're introduced to several bad guys, and I suppose each time you meet one, it's someone who's higher and more deadly. And now I don't really know. Because the Inquisitor, when he kind of turns up in Tarkin, the Inquisitor is, as a Sith, you would think, oh, he's a big bad guy. We know what Vader's like, and Tarkin just talks to him like he's a piece of shit.
Yeah.
And you think, you're not powered in any way, but you have this confidence about you that makes you a damn sight more scarier than the guy with the pointy teeth and the red lightsaber. Which is quite interesting, the fact that, obviously he's high in his rank. He's like top of the top, but you realise that this guy, he's very scary, even though he's just a normal human. He's just a normal guy, and the power he's got, I suppose, is just from his mind, just from his his tactical genius, or not so maybe. I don't know. Putting exhaust on your Death Star,
There's a whole movie about that.
Is it?
So I guess the only final point I'll make is that I absolutely adore the original trilogy, as Mike's heard many, many times. But let's face it, it's a bit of a sausage fest, right? So they all go off to save the princess. So you need a female to play the part of the princess. Oh, and Mon Mothma is in there as well for about 5 seconds. So it's light on real strong female characters, and Leia's got stronger as time's gone on, I think. But even in Return of the Jedi, she was rescued, wasn't she? I guess she did try and rescue Han, and then ended up having to get rescued herself. But
yeah,
I think what this series does as well. So Hera and Sabine, they feel like real fleshed out characters. We don't learn as much about Sabine in this one. We will learn a little bit more as we go on, and Hera's she's almost like the mum of the group, isn't she? Everyone seems a bit broken, but she seems to have it all together in this season, I think. But I believe all of the characters, good strong male characters, good strong female characters as well. So I think that's an underrated part of this season. Mm-hmm. Or the whole series, in fact, not just this season.
See, I'm interested about Sabine because when we first meet her, she's got the helmet on, and I thought, oh, Mandalorian. But then she takes the helmet off, and I thought, oh, it's a Mandalorian armor, but they're not meant to set the helmet off, as far as I'm aware. So,
well, Maff, let's just say here's a little thing. That I will say. Same thing about Andor is that everything that is in the live-action Mandalorian stuff has been explored more in Rebels already. So just any listeners as well, if they're listening to this fun, they don't watch Rebels, don't know what you're doing with yourself. But what you'll be... The thing is, whenever I push people to watch it, it's happened with Dave, it's happened with Tonya, it's happened with numerous friends of mine. They all go, when you get to the end of it, you're like, why is this not more like advertised on Disney Plus? Why is this not front and center? Why are they not pushing this? It's like, I don't know. What they're doing is just getting little chunks of the ideas and going, let's make a whole show about that. Let's make a whole show about that. And then everyone's like, oh my God, Andor's so amazing, and so is Mandalorian. It's like, here's Rebels, who's done all of these things before all of you. So do you have any predictions, Maffs, or as we start to wrap up of
the question with that, though, is that because of the media it is, because it's animated? Is that why it's not ever been pushed as much, because people will just see it as, oh, it's a kids program,
well,
which is it's kind of how I saw it to a certain degree. It's like, you know, Dave mentioned Transformers. I loved watching Transformers, but it's like George watches Rescue Bots, and I would rather gouge my eyes out than watch that sometimes, because you see, this is the thing. This is where I think this works, because there's stuff there for the adults, and that there's stuff there that we've grown up and we know about, and also for the kids. Whereas, you know, some of the cartoons you watch these days now, you know, it's like, oh God, you know.
Yeah.
But predictions.
If you have any you wish to share, and then me and Dave will know if you're right or wrong, but we'll not give you any hint. We'll keep our poker faces on.
Yeah.
Or what you want. Anything that you'd want to see.
It's funny because it was nice that we saw Darth Vader at the end of the last episode. At the same point, I don't really want him to be in it, because I feel it may take away from what Rebels is. I'd rather just continue and see this group, this family grow together. I would like to see understand a bit more about Sabine, because I don't think they've really touched her at all in this. Again, Hera, like you say, Dave, she's the mum, she's the one, she's the glue that's kind of held them all together. I would like. It's funny because although we spent 15 episodes learning about this crew, I don't know them. Zeb, they mentioned the genocide of his people.
Yeah, this is a kids show. Let's remind everyone. Like, this is a kids show. They mentioned genocide.
Yeah, and it's like, whoa. I mean, the fact that at that point as well, when he fights Callus with the, I don't know what the staff is.
It's like an electro staff of some sort.
Yeah.
I can't remember this, but it's the guards of the Lasat guards.
It's like, you could see the way they showed the anger from him, and that he was willing to die for this. And it's like, I want to know more about that. I hope they go more into that, so that you kind of, which I'm sure they will do, because, you know, there's 4 seasons of this. Surely they're not going to just, you know, do once a week each episode. But even Callus and the Inquisitor, I want to know a bit more about them.
You're not going to know much more about the Grand Inquisitor, I'm afraid.
Oh, right, okay.
Well, he's...
Oh, no, because no.
He fell into the fire, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, but Darth Maul got chopped in half.
Well, I will say, there is a comic. When the Inquisitor says there's a fate, there are some things far more frightening than death. He does mean that, and he does appear again, not on screen. You have to read comics to get that tasty morsel, or listen to my show, because I talk about it. So... But well, basically, it's pretty much touched on relatively everything I think we need to on this one. Aside from the Grand Inquisitor, was voiced by Jason Isaacs, who plays Lucius Malfoy in Harry Potter, which is all good fun, isn't it? He doesn't play him in Obi-Wan Kenobi, and that's Rupert something. I've forgotten his name, and Ria's going to kill me because she likes the actor. I'll have to remember and put it in the show notes. But basically, I think I've gone over pretty much everything that I have on my list, and each of you have touched upon some really great things. I also love the ghost ship, the design of it, and the Phantom as well that comes with it. Seeing like what happens if a ship falls out of hyperspace, like they do with the Phantom in one of those episodes, that's really cool. I love Ezra's calling to the Force. You hear the sound that he kind of hears. I love all those elements, and as a little roundup for low points, I think there is a couple of bits where it's a bit too silly, and it does kind of cut through. It has MCU syndrome a little bit, whereas like we need some humor to lighten up this darkness. That does ease up. That does with Rebels, I say that you grow with the show. So each season is slightly more mature than the last one, and there are episodes that go ahead, especially in the later seasons, where there is no humor. It's just it's just story, and some of it really hurts. But yeah, I've got that, and as I've written, there's the odd somewhat inconsequential episodes, and then sometimes some people believe that the animation is jarring, which I'm not overly fussed about, and then there are a couple episodes that are a little bit repetitive of things against the Empire, but I think, as we've said, they kind of work in the bigger story. You get lessons about characters, and there are tasty morsels that do come back. There are a lot of things that Dave Filoni is very good at in this and in Clone Wars is, as I've kind of pointed out, he's noticed a little pattern. Sometimes there's an episode that seems really like it means nothing, and it will come back episodes or even seasons later, and you'll be like, oh, I remember that. So that's really it for the Rebels conversation so far. We'll be watching Series 2. I'm kind of doing it cruel for Maff, because we're actually somewhat forcing him to, it's going to be even harder, because now it's like 3, 2, 1, go, and you can just watch Rebels Series 2 as quickly as you want, but it's like, when you finish Series 2 Rebels, you'll be like, Mike, when are you next free so we can record? Because few people have to wait. I mean, I did, because I was watching them as they were coming out after Series 2, so I did have to wait nearly a full year to watch the rest of them, and was waiting weekly, which was killing me. But last sort of things with Rebels, or anything else you want to say before we plug our stuff, I will say that this Series 1 is set 5 years before the Battle of Yavin, around the same time as Series 1 of Andor, and I should have said this at the start, and it's each season of Rebels is around a year. That's a good idea to kind of go on and things. And there's lots more connections, lots more fun things to make. Some might surprise you. And I love the planet Lothal that was created for Star Wars Rebels as well. But final thoughts, last sort of things, and plugs. We'll go to you first, Maff. Final things, anything else you haven't yet said, and then say your new social media handle that you've had for a short while now, and anything else that you've been up to.
One thing that I wanted to, I looked at the cast list that Freddie Prinze Jr. was the voice of Ken, and I was like, whoa, did not expect that. And then looking into it, that he's obviously gone into voice acting. And that's so it was like, all right, okay, well, that's someone who I do actually know. But yeah, I'm starting to believe that maybe this is some of the best Star Wars content, but we're not there yet.
Season 1 is not close, I'd say. It's you get hints of it. You get glints.
Yeah, that's interesting. If this isn't the best, I did enjoy this. It's not there up there with the top. I think Andor, out of everything Star Wars, I think Andor's probably the best bit of Star Wars that I've enjoyed. Rogue One's very close, and that, but I think Andor, it lit something in me again to make me want to watch Star Wars.
Mm-hmm. And we'll see. We'll see if you say the same when we get to the next time of Rebels, and then we'll see what you say after season 4. But please, Maff, where can people find you, and what else have you been up to recently?
Right, okay. You can find me on the Twitterverse. I am Maff UK78. I was on a episode of The Last of Us the other week for episode 3 with Bill and Frank. Amazing, go watch that. Once we finish recording this, I'm actually going to go watch episode 4, because I'll be on Last of Us episode 4 with Rhea tomorrow as well. So that's probably going to be already out before we.
It probably will be. Yeah.
I'm trying to think what else I did something else last week. I can't remember what it was.
That's fine. I'll put it in the show notes. But if you remember when I'll do my jargon, then you can feel free. So then, Dave, any final thoughts on Star Wars Rebels and the plugs for what other stuff? Not everything, because we will be here all night because you're doing 100 things.
So I think, I'm glad we've embarked on this. I do think Series 1, I always say series, but I know the Americans say season. So Season 1 is the weakest because it's just introducing you to the characters, it's setting yourself in the world, and so it just gets better and better. I do feel like Rebels sets you up to enjoy some of the more recent live content more. So stuff like that happens in Mandalorian, season 2 in particular, stuff that happens in Andor. You can sort of tie the themes back to Rebels, whereas Clone Wars, for me at least, it just made me enjoy the prequels more. It made the films better, so much more. And so, who knows where we'll end up, whether we'll end up covering that. But that's how I mentally see these things kind of joining up. And so, yeah, I think it's probably going to be bedtime for me, but I am chomping at the bit to get on with season 2, to be honest.
So am I.
Yeah. In terms of plugs, so for VHS Strikes Back this week, we've got Deadly Ransom coming out, which is a ridiculous movie that Chris picked because it's got Lauren Avedon in it. But the thing that's consuming Chris and my life at the minute is reality TV, because we've somehow fallen into covering 2 seasons concurrently, one Love Island and one Married at First Sight Australia. Messy as fuck, but essentially we've got 6 episodes a week for Love Island, 4 episodes a week for Married at First Sight, 10 fucking episodes a week we're doing on Chris and Dave's reality TV. So we're trying to do other stuff as well, but that is consuming our lives. We haven't fallen out just yet. We're doing early morning, we're doing late at night, we're just snatching time where we can. So but we're dickheads and we just love it.
That's amazing. Obviously, I'll put details in the show notes for everyone. And also, this will be out... it may be this week or next week. I'll figure it out. I won't waffle on at this part. But very soon, we will be doing the weekly discussion shows on Mandalorian Series 3 as well. I'm aiming to have those recorded the day after Mandalorian comes out. So Series 3 comes out, first episode, 1st of March, which is a Wednesday. And then so I'm going to aim to be recording on most Thursdays. There's going to be a couple of Friday recordings because certain guests who are only available on Fridays that I want to speak with. But generally, it'll be within a couple of days of those episodes coming out. There's going to be 8 episodes of Mandalorian Series 3. So make sure, Maff, that you catch up so you can actually go on the show. But all audience members, obviously, tune into the feed of Comics in Motion. I will also have them on the feed of youtube.com/genuine chit-chat, which people may be watching right now. And I will not be hosting every episode. I think we're going to swap a few of them over, mainly because it runs over my birthday and, more importantly, Megan's birthday. And I won't be able to record on her birthday because she'll kill me. So that's what we've got going on in the future. Obviously, if you're listening to this and you haven't listened to Star Wars Comics in Canon, please go do that now. You can listen to every episode on the feed of Comics in Motion or on the YouTube channel if you're watching this, or you can go on its own special feed now. I've started its own feed. Nothing against the lovely people in Comics in Motion, but I just thought if anyone wants to go through the entire back catalogue of Star Wars Comics in Canon and searching for it, I find you search for specific episodes, it comes up way easier than it does through the Comics in Motion feed. So if you want to keep up to date with all the High Republic stuff, that's already on the feed of Comics in Motion. If you want to start from the start and try and catch up with everything, I'm releasing several episodes a week. Go over to that feed of Star Wars Comics in Canon. You don't need to have read a single comic in your entire life to enjoy it, so please consider checking that out. But friends, thank you so much. Find us at Comics in Motion P on the various social media places. Find me at Genuine Chit-Chat on the most social media places as well. And we will speak to you next time, probably in a month or two, with Rebels Series 2. Please let us know what you thought and stuff, and we will speak to you very soon. So as always, may the Force be with you.
And with you.